Hi Bluecoats, it's Mr. Harris here, and I am bringing you this week's edition of Vote whether every country should follow the same coronavirus advice. A few videos to share in this one, which I hope you'll be able to get the sound unlike last week. So we'll begin without further ado. I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through the presentation. It's quite early in the morning, so sorry if I'm looking a little bit tired, but hopefully we'll wake up with the Votes for Schools. Okay. First things first, let's look at the feedback on should young people earn pocket money. So 82%, so just over 8 out of 10 people said that yes, young people should earn pocket money. One person's argument was they shouldn't just be given it, they should have to earn it by doing certain things around the house. It creates a good work ethic. It's teaching you that you have to earn money to work to get money. And also it's learning about money skills. So I think they're all very important points. On the other side, though, and I thought this was interesting, so 17.6% said no. One pupil said, well, they think people end up buying things that they don't really need. And I think in this lockdown, it's been interesting to think about that we're not buying so many things that we used to, but still valuing other things. And also, you should just do it because you're a part of a team and not because you're getting paid for it. And I think there's also a lot of that going on around the community at the moment, delivering food to vulnerable or old people, not because you're getting any money for it, but just because you're part of a team and a neighborhood. Okay, some things in the news then. The Premier League, they're trying to play again behind closed doors. Boris Johnson returned to work after recovering from COVID-19, and he and his partner also had a new baby, which became top news. TikTok star Charli D'Amelio has told fans not to discuss her body after some stuff. And this was incredible. Captain Tom Morgan received over 125,000 cards for his 100th birthday. They filled a whole school hall, and I think it was over £26 million for NHS charities last week. So powerful stuff. Okay, quick starter for you. In the world, where would it be? So look at those options. You've got somewhere hot and sunny, somewhere urban, means like a busy, like city built up area, somewhere cold and snowy, somewhere rural, somewhere quiet, or somewhere busy. Quick discussion maybe with someone at home, or if you're doing with this someone on a video call, be a great time to discuss this. Okay, me personally, I think I'd like somewhere maybe warm, because I feel the cold. I get cold quite easily. I'm sitting here in a blanket right now. And then probably somewhere urban, so somewhere busy. In my life, I've lived in London and in Birmingham, and I like these busy places. I like lots of people being around. I like getting away to the rural, quiet areas sometimes, but maybe more for like a holiday. So I'd say somewhere hot and sunny and somewhere urban, maybe somewhere like Cape Town in South Africa would be pretty cool to live in. If you want a challenge, do you think the coronavirus has changed where you think you'd like to live? That's an interesting point. Okay, so this week's question, should every country follow the same coronavirus advice? Why are we talking about this? So all around the world, every country is trying to slow down the spread of coronavirus and keep people safe, stop them from dying. But as you'll see in this lesson, different countries are doing different things. In the UK, we've been having a daily briefing where we get an update on what's happening and what they want to do next. But would it make sense for everyone to follow the same advice? Around the world, there's lots of debate like we're doing now about who's doing the best job and what other countries could learn from them. And we'll explore this today. The new coronavirus has been called a pandemic. This means that it's affecting every country in the world. It's spread everywhere. In this lesson, we'll be finding out about 6 different countries and what they've been doing. The 6 countries are the UK, where we are now, Spain, so that's Southwest Europe, Japan, an island nation in Asia, Israel, Brazil, and Hong Kong. And if you want to play a game, you can just try and see where they are on the map. If you can point to them on the map, the 6 different countries, and there's 6 marks for you to get. But we'll find the answers out as we go through the next few slides. Okay, so the UK is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and more than 66 million people. There have been more than 150,000 coronavirus cases and more than 25,000 deaths when this was recorded. Let's think about how it's affected us here in the UK. So again, a discussion to do with your partner or someone in the house. What's happened to the way we travel? How are you getting about at the moment? Has anyone been able to go on any holidays? How are the shops different to before the coronavirus? How many people are allowed in? When are they open? Is it busier? Is it quieter? Have you been able to see any of your friends or family? Who have you been socializing with? What's going on with school? Well, that's kind of obvious, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. Is anything going on in the community? Has anyone in your family been delivering food? Have you had to get the food delivered to you because you've been self-isolating? And finally, leisure. Where have you been going? I don't think anyone's been to Bounce or anything like that recently. Is anything closed in your area? Okay. So children, what we're going to do next is, because there's a video for each of the other 5 countries, I'm going to show each of those videos. Otherwise, it's a bit fussy going back and forth with the videos. Once you've watched the videos, you can pause it and we'll have a discussion about what's different between what's gone on in the United Kingdom and those 6 different countries, or 5 different countries, as well as the United Kingdom. Okay. So, yeah, the sound.
Hi, I'm Wilf, and this is my brother Rufus, and as you can see, we're in Barcelona, Spain, with lovely sun, but it's a bit too sunny for filming things like these, so we're going to come over here. We have been in lockdown since the 14th of March, and it's been just total lockdown, and we haven't really been allowed to go outside, other than over 18s, they're allowed to go out to go shopping or walk with dogs, so we've been seeing a lot of dog walkers around lately, and we really...
Yeah, but since I have, because I'm under 14, I've been able to go out for a walk.
Well, it's a day of the parent, and it can only be of up to a 1 kilometre radius from home. And obviously wearing a mask and staying as far away from people as possible. And yesterday, our Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, he's released the upcoming rules, which are basically that there's going to be a decrease in the restrictions and just general quarantine, kind of phasing out throughout the course of a month and a half. Is starting with kids of up to 14 years of age going out for a walk, and ending with a 50% capacity. Obviously, being aware of the masks and just the 2-meter distance between people and stuff, but hopefully the last phase, phase 3, which is all public places being opened at 50% capacity, will take place around the 8th of June, and we'll hopefully be back to what we know as normality by the 22nd of June.
Schools won't be open until then, though, so...
Yeah, so schools are going to be closed until September, definitely, because we go back in September and we end around when phase 3 will end. So, that's what we're dealing with in Spain. We'll see how it unfolds.
Okay, currently living in Osaka, Japan. One of the first things the government here did was, at the end of February, shut down the majority of schools till the beginning of April, when the new term started. And then, I think on around April 7th, introduced a state of emergency in major metropolitan areas, which then spread out to the whole country. and that involves a suggested lockdown rather than one that seems to be particularly enforced. Staying at home, one person going out once a day for shopping, that kind of thing. In my area is quite quiet, and there are definitely still people around when I go out. Groups of people, group of kids gathering, that sort of thing. The majority of people wear face masks and really have since February, and there does seem to be access to those, although they're in very short supply in shops. I've had to order mine online. Plans for the future, I believe there's going to be an announcement in the first week of May, which coincides with Golden Week, which is when lots of public holidays coincide in Japan. So it's often a big time for travel and holidays. So that's going to be, yeah, we'll see what happens then. My company is currently supporting us to work from home, and sort of on a rolling basis, every 3 weeks they make a new decision. So again, waiting to see what happens at the beginning of May.
Jessica, and I live in Israel. On March 19th, the government declared a state of emergency. So businesses closed, schools closed, people were told to practice social distancing, and essentially we were told as a country that we had to stay at home and be on lockdown for quite a while. And people pretty much listened to the instructions and stayed at home. And we've all been staying at home for a very long time. One of the major challenges that we face as a country is that April is a month full of holidays. We have Passover, which is a very huge Jewish holiday. We had Ramadan, the start of Ramadan at the end of April, and we have Easter, of course. So normally people, they celebrate together, they pray in large gatherings, they have huge family celebrations, and of course, different religious practitioners will go to the different holy sites in the city, in the country, and worship there. But none of that was possible this year. Everybody had to stay home and celebrate in their own homes and find ways to connect and be with each other remotely, which was a challenge, but it was something that the country really came together about, and everybody pretty much stayed home. Because of this, as of today, actually, when I last looked at the numbers, today is the first day that we've had more recoveries than we've had new active cases, and that's some pretty good news. So things are looking up. Businesses are starting to open up very slowly. People are allowed out of their houses now, but of course everybody has to wear a mask and practice social distancing. So being cautiously optimistic, hoping that we've turned a corner, but of course everyone is still being very careful and trying to cooperate and work together and make sure that we don't have a second wave. So that's our story here. Hope everybody's staying safe and healthy.
My name is Fabio and I live here in Brazil. So in Brazil, we had our first case of COVID-19 in the last week of February, around the same time as we were celebrating Carnival. Back then, none of us, including the government, couldn't anticipate how fast the virus would spread around across the country. And we were just hoping that the tropical climate could play a significant role in slowing it down, which hasn't happened. It was just around the second week of March that the main cities began to take official measures to deal with the virus outbreak, including shutting down schools and universities, and then closing non-essential shops. Most of these initial measures were taken by the local governments. Our president, on the other hand, he has continued to deny and downgrade the seriousness of the situation. At some point, in one of his speeches, for example, he called COVID-19 a mild flu. Last week, we have been told to begin wearing masks in public spaces. This has become mandatory in many places across the country. In terms of exercise, we are allowed to run or cycle as much as we like. The situation where I live seems okay. The main problem seems to be that a lot of people in Brazil, they live in very precarious conditions. So I'm talking about 4 or 5 people living in a one-room house, which makes almost impossible for them to self-isolate. We don't really know in terms of what's going to happen next. We don't really know when things will start to reopen. There is a lot of pressure from some private sectors to get back to business as normal, but the local governments, they have been very, very cautious about what they say and what they plan. In São Paulo, for example, our biggest city, they are using geolocation data to measure how many people are following the rules, the social distance advice. There are plans to begin to reopen non-essential shops from mid-May, but it all depends on how the outbreak unfolds in each city here. Well, that's all from Brazil. I hope you're all safe and take care. Bye-bye.
Virus is really like. So we've been living with the virus since its outbreak in January of this year. And because Hong Kong is so good at knowing what to do with viruses, because we've had things like SARS, swine flus, all the strains of bird flus, people naturally know what they need to do. And so without any major government advice, we all automatically practice social distancing. We wear our face masks wherever we go. And if we can't wash our hands with hot soapy water, then we use this. And so by just doing those small measures, we've helped contain the spread of the virus really effectively here in Hong Kong. Now, in addition to that, our government has also imposed other measures, and that has taken shape in the form of our borders are all closed. We have to have our temperature taken in every building before we enter it. And if it's over a certain degree, then we're refused entry. In addition to that, the government closed down theatres, gyms, public spaces like parks, recreation grounds, and in addition to that, bars and clubs, but did give us some restaurants. So we can go out to eat, but those restaurants again have to take our temperature before we're allowed in. We can't sit on a table of any more than 4 people, and we have to be 6 feet apart from another table. So there are some things that we have to work with, but it allows us to have a near normal life here in Hong Kong.
Okay, hopefully you've been able to watch all of those videos okay. Really interesting to hear the different perspectives from 5 different countries. We'll just have a quick discussion about those. So the first person, Wilf, they were in Spain, a country with 47 million people. They had 230,000 cases and nearly 25,000 deaths. How was their lockdown similar to the one in the UK, and how was it different? Just have a think and a discussion about that. So it seems to me like the Spanish lockdown was a bit more strict. So here in the UK, we've been able to go out for 1 piece of exercise every day. In Spain, they weren't allowed to go out at all, weren't even allowed to leave their house. So Hannah's brother, my partner, he lives in Spain, and they're just in a block of flats, and they can only look out to people on the balcony until the relaxing of that. Second person, we saw Ben from Japan. So Japan is a quite relatively small island nation, but it's actually got 126 million people. So Tokyo, the capital, is one of the most densely, highly populated capital cities in the world. They've had 14,000 cases, but less than 500 deaths. How was their lockdown different to the one in the UK? As you can hear from Ben, it was probably slightly less strict lockdown when he was saying that there were groups of people still hanging around outside, but actually they've had under 500 deaths, so a lot less than what we've experienced here in the UK. Israel, country in the Middle East, close to Egypt, with 8.6 million people. They've had 16,000 cases and 200 deaths. And we heard from Jessica. Probably a really difficult time for Israel because there were a lot of holy sites, and as she was saying, there's a lot of holidays around that time, including Passover. It was the beginning of Ramadan, Easter, and people weren't able to meet and congregate in those normal communities. Fabio from Brazil, 212 million people live there. Big country, Brazil. In South America, the Amazon rainforest is partly in there. They've had the Olympics and the World Cup in recent years. It sounds interesting that their president kind of denied that it was serious. He was saying that it's just a flu, but it seems like the rest of the country took note because they had nearly 80,000 cases and more than 5,000 deaths. So a lot of people. And finally, Hong Kong. I thought this was really interesting. So it's an area close to China in Asia, 7.5 million people. They've had 1,000 cases and less than 10 deaths. What I thought was interesting about Hong Kong was the fact that because they've had situations like this before, probably not as serious as this, the people in Hong Kong knew what to do and they did it more naturally. So they social distanced, they were wearing face masks. Certain places were shut down. They couldn't go to certain places. They have to take temperature before they go into buildings. Seems like they were a lot more well prepared. And I wonder if in the future, as a country or even as the world, we'll be more prepared for a viral outbreak like this, because we've seen how incredibly difficult it's been. Okay. Moving on then, you've got a chance to tell me what you would do. You have to imagine that you are the leader of a country. On the next few slides, you're going to hear from some experts about how different lockdowns could affect your country. For each, you need to decide if you would listen. And I want you to do an action for this. So first one, if you think it's bad advice, you do this. If you're not sure, this. And if you think we should follow this, put your hands up. On the right there, you've got 8 leaders from across the world. Just another quick quiz if you've got the time to do it. I wonder how many of them you can name. I'll put the answers in the notes underneath this video. I think I can name them. Definitely 6. I might be able to have a go at the other 2, but yeah, 6 of those world leaders. Okay, first piece of advice then. If we stop a lockdown too early, the virus will spread quickly again, taking us back to the beginning. We must stay locked down until we know how to cure the virus. Do you think that's bad advice? Not sure. We should follow this. Stopping businesses will cost the country a lot of money. Many people will lose jobs and some families won't be able to afford their rent. So we mustn't lock down for too long. Bad advice? Not sure. We should follow this. If too many people get the virus at the same time, we won't have enough space in hospital to treat them. A medium lockdown is the best way to do this. So controlling the number of people who've got the virus. You know the drill now. Bad advice. Not sure. We should follow this. A full lockdown will slow the spread of the virus. This is why people shouldn't leave their house unless they need food or they are a key worker. I think this is probably the last one. Many people will complain about lockdown. They won't want to stay inside their houses and not go to work or school. We shouldn't lock down at all. There's another one. The more people in a country, the more easily the virus can spread. So bigger countries need stricter lockdowns than smaller ones. Interesting point there, because we saw Japan, didn't we, with 126 million people, compared to the UK, who've got 66 million people, and who had the most cases. Okay, so does one size fit all? On the next few slides, you're going to see some different opinions about how the world should respond to the coronavirus. If you agree, put your thumbs up. If you disagree, put your thumbs down. Every country is different, so what works in one country won't always work in a different one. They should do what's best for their people. Agree or disagree? If every country does a different thing, it will only take us longer to get back to normal. We should all work together as a team. We should all be learning from each other. Otherwise, we'll keep making the same mistakes and it will take longer to stop the virus. Even if one country gets rid of the virus and goes back to normal, no one will be able to travel in or out of that country in case they bring the virus back again. That's why we need to all do the same thing. More people in a country means that the virus can spread more easily, so the countries with the most people should have a stricter lockdown than the smaller ones. Okay, children, time for you to cast your vote. So on the yes side of whether we should follow the same advice, we're facing the virus together. Different rules is confusing. We cannot go back to life as normal until every country has brought the virus under control, so it's best to follow the same rules. Countries should learn from each other. If leaders see something working in another country, we should do it too. There will be more problems in the future if we don't follow the same rules. And on the no, we should not follow the same advice. Every country is different, and what works in one place might not work in another. Many countries cannot afford to follow the same rules as others. For example, poorer countries can't afford to lock down for a long time. The situation keeps changing, so our rules need to keep changing too. If we all had the same rules, then we couldn't adapt to the changes. The long-term effects might be very bad for some countries if they have to do the same as everyone else. Okay, if you go to the link in this, you can find some other reactions from other countries. We're certainly not going to do that now. And there are your answers if you wanted to know where the different countries were for the quiz we said earlier. Okay, children, I'd love you to go and vote on this. You can go to SurveyMonkey where you can cast your vote. And if you have any comments, you can email amy@votesforschools.com. She likes to hear from children across the country. That's the end of the presentation today. So I will love you and leave you. It's quite a long video, I'm afraid. I mean, I don't know how I feel about the question today, but what I do think is, as globally, that means people throughout the world, I think we do need to work together. There's some rich countries and some poor countries being affected by this. And I think if we take an insular approach, it's going to get very difficult for some people. So that's a little bit of what I think. But anyway, I'm signing out now. Enjoy your vote.